Welcome to another installment of This Is Not Normal on the Political Drain podcast with Drill Sergeant Doug, aka Admin Doug, a U.S. Army veteran, teacher, musician, and family man from Jamaica, now fights for justice and democracy through commentary and humor. Follow him on YouTube at Political Drain and at Sons of Liberty Official as Drill Sergeant, aka Admin Doug, continues to protect our freedoms.
It reminds me a lot of one of my very favorite articles about the Trump movement, written by Mr. Jamel Bouie, called "The Cruelty is the Point." And I think that the big thing about the cruelty being the point for so many of Trump's voters is, in fact, there's no convincing them that this is bad, because this is one of the things that certain kinds of Trump supporters really like about the movement, about what is going on, right? The idea that there are interlopers or enemies within who need punishing, and cruelty by the state is a feature, not a bug, for certain parts of the modern Republican movement, certainly for the MAGA movement in general. Right? This is a country that had plantations for a very long time. This is a country that had Japanese internment camps, right? And what that means to me is that it is a sign of an unhealthy or an unsteady democracy, that we do not currently grow the white blood cells for an immune system to keep these people away from the mechanisms of power.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome to On Your Left with Drill Sergeant Doug. That's me, Drill Sergeant Doug. And this is the political roundtable, but the kind that doesn't suck. You know, the kind that doesn't have people on just to spew one wing or the other's talking points without actually having anything meaningful to say. And this show is a very special one because it's really about what's been going on, not just in New Jersey, but all over America ever since this ridiculous regime has come to power. As our First Amendment rights are rapidly being shrunk into free speech zones, and the word free itself is buckling under the weight like Trump's pathetic weightlifting skit. Oh, right? It's buckling, and I think that the breaking point might be somewhere in Delaney Hall, somewhere around there, because we're seeing not only the ridiculous ICE people and the detention people be as ridiculous as they've been, and as violent and as disgusting as they've been inside and outside of that place. We're even seeing the state police officers, the city police officers, coming in and joining the anti-free speech party. So today, I have some very special guests, and we're going to talk about where we go from here. We're going to talk about how to move forward from here, what we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again, but also, how are we going to stop this now? What are we going to do? And as always, we have somebody who's been on the ground there, who happens to be a creator, but this time they've been protesting on the ground. Is going to have a lot to say. Chance, you've been on the ground there. Tell everybody who you are. We'll do short introductions, and then we'll get right in.
Yeah, I am Chance Meeting. I'm a writer and a filmmaker and a documentarian who has been documenting resistance movements since the beginning of 2025 with the second Trump administration. And I was just in New Jersey at Delaney Hall this past weekend, and everything that I saw on the ground. I was on the ground in Minneapolis for 2 weeks during Operation Metro Surge, on the ground when Alex Preddy was murdered, and, you know, saw the cruelty of ICE then when they shut down pretty much 6 city blocks and were just doing nothing but brutalizing peaceful protesters and gassing us and everything. What I saw on the 30th of May on the ground at Delaney Hall was worse than that. It was insane. And then the response from Governor Sherrill before what she said was going to happen, with bringing the police there, saying that they were going to protect peaceful protesters, which was a lie. Saying that they were going to protect their First Amendment rights, which was a lie, saying that they were not going to be as violent as ICE, which was a lie. And then afterwards saying that they did not use any projectiles, which was also a lie. I was standing right next to Ian Austin when he was shot. He was shot 6 times. And they were actively targeting him, all for using his voice. This was not ICE. This was the New Jersey State Police. That they were not beating people when they were all at the fence. They had batons. They were beating people. Photographer Tom Hudson, he captured some footage of that happening. Pretty much everything that Governor Sherrill was saying was a lie. And she brought the police in there to brutalize protesters. Now, I got out on the ground the 29th, a little bit late, after most of the crowd had dispersed and everything, but I saw the footage the first night that the police had been brought in, and ICE was there behind the gates and on the roof. And as the police were doing their thing, kettling protesters, gassing them, ICE was taking pot shots at the crowd of protesters.
Wow.
With pepper balls the entire time. And we saw, the deal that they made with DHS. They put out propaganda saying that they were collaborating with them, and that's exactly what they're doing. The police are collaborating with ICE to protect ICE, to allow them to keep having innocent people in concentration camps and torturous conditions, and to brutalize the peaceful protesters who are advocating for the release of these innocent people.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about what you saw while you were there. That's so important. I just want to get everybody introduced. Tyler, tell everybody where you're running and who you are.
Absolutely. My name's Tyler Vandenberg. I'm a 7-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, former Jeopardy champion. I also just, as of this week, finished a master's in public policy degree from the Harvard Kennedy School. I've been campaigning for Congress for about a year now. In the California 6th Congressional District, which is parts of Yolo, Sacramento, and Placer counties. One of the most diverse districts in America. I'm running since Prop 50 against a gentleman who, until just a few months ago, was a Republican and a reliable vote for the president and his MAGA agenda. He has now since become the only member of the House to say that he is a quote unquote independent, to try to get away from the fact that we are going to drive him out of office and hold him accountable for his actions and what he's done to enable the backsliding in our democracy and our current situation in this country by voting him out of office. It's going to be a very raucous and tight run election out here tomorrow. The primary is Tuesday, June 2nd, and I am very grateful to be here in the closing hours of the campaign to get a chance to spread the word.
And for the first time, we're going to have portions of this come out a week in advance, which will be actually tonight. Most of the time, this comes out the week after, but we want to make sure that the candidates here are getting some vision. So don't let that guy squirm out of that Republican vote. And lastly, we have, well, not lastly, I'm hoping we can get John Shue back, but lastly, right now, we have Director Ops, who is the Executive Director of Fight Against Fascism organization. FAFO, gotta love a good FAFO. Give a little introduction.
Yeah, hi, how are you? And behind me is my husband. Everybody say hi, Tom.
What's up? Hi, Tom.
We just got back from Delaney Hall. I just need my pink bag. We just got back from Delaney Hall. I was on the ground Wednesday night for a bit, trying to help corral and keep people out of the street, because at that point in time there was still ongoing traffic down Dormius, the street that Delaney Hall is located on. Unfortunately, shortly after I left, I would say namely 20 minutes after that, a young woman was hit over the head with a baton and had her scalp lacerated. She has made a public statement, and she's with one of the indivisible groups down here in South Jersey. She's doing okay, so that's the good thing. But I wish her well. And then I know that there was a leg crush injury because ICE beat the protesters into oncoming traffic, and a man's leg got crushed by an 18-wheeler. Those were the first two major injuries that I was made aware of. The other things that we're seeing are burns from the canisters, obviously the injuries from the rubber bullets, and the excess coughing and gastrointestinal issues people are having from the tear gas. And I was there, and I documented what happened the night that the police decided to react to us on night 2, which was what, the 31st? Or no, the 30th. Excuse me, the 30th. The 30th. That was insane. So Chance is absolutely correct. I kept my distance and I was moving people north. But even with doing that, I promise you along the way, I got everything. So when Mikey Sherrill said that the cops were not in gear, you can go and look at the TikTok for Fight Against Fascism organization, because 5 hours before she decided to lie in that thread, that tweet, wherever she posted it, I already had them up on screen in riot gear. They were there waiting for us.
Yeah. Not only that, they were staging down the road before any of that happened. We left after the Pro Ice and the Proud Boys were there. Because
so did we. I saw them. I pulled in the mountain division came in. They brought the horses back in. They staged.
Yep.
Right
they
in
were
the Essex
already
County
ready
lot.
for that response. They were already going to do that. There was no provocation that they were waiting for, or anything. That was always going to be the response.
They had staged around the same time the night before. So basically, even though they were like, oh, we'll do better, they already made up their mind. So they continued the status quo. And I think the scariest thing had to be the taunting, right? So the motorcade that kept going in and out for no goddamn reason, the line of police officers that kept circling all of us, even them doing it with the horses, and the police in riot gear, which Mikey Sherrill said was not there. I don't know if I'm just blind or I'm hallucinating, but one of us is not telling the truth.
Okay, well, let me catch up the viewers here. We had someone here who was running in, I believe it was the 6th District in New Jersey. His name is John Shue. And this is all my fault, guys. We had a whole nice conversation going on. None of it was recorded because I'm a failure. And I'll be thinking about this for at least 5 days, because that's how my mind works. But I'm going to try to get over it. But this is what happened. He was running on the Palestine issue. And I said that after hearing about what Chance had to say about what was going on down there, hearing what Director Ops has to say about what's going on there, I said, how long until the same idea that allows Palestine to happen, the same kind of thoughtlessness that we have towards human beings and otherizing and seeing them as others happens before that happens here. And Chance had a great answer. Then Tyler, I want you to respond to it, and then we can get back into the flow. And if you don't know who John Shue is, look him up. He deserves to be looked up. He had some great answers, and it was only my fault. But that's where you're coming in on now. Talk about it, Chance.
Yeah, I was just saying that same culture of normalizing genocide and dehumanizing people and othering people. America set the precedent for that. This country is built on genocide and ethnic cleansing and supremacist ideology. And that's the same type of supremacist ideology that we see that perpetuates the genocide of Palestinians with Israel. And it's already embedded in our culture, a culture that has never been able to reckon with that cruelty, that system of cruelty that has been allowed to fester in this nation. There's never been a real revolution where we have fundamentally changed the system that's allowed that to persist. That oppression has just evolved over time. And now we're seeing it come to a head right now. So when we talk about, the conditions for what's happening in Palestine happening here, I think that has happened, and we're already seeing it happening now. They're going to start using the same, or they already are, the same levels of surveillance, the same weaponry, artificial intelligence that's being utilized, that was utilized over there, happening over here. They're talking about uniting the United States military with the Israeli military. And, Israel acts as the imperial arm of the United States in the Middle East. And we pretty much work in tandem with them. So those two things are married, and that's a mirror of our own culture. So yeah.
We've never reconciled with it. It's a big deal. We've put Band-Aids on it. We've made amendments and we've tried to, and those things that now many of them have just been struck down by the same Supreme Court to remind us that we never reconciled with it. We've been putting Band-Aids on it for 200 years, 250 to be exact. Tyler, I'd like to know your thoughts on what he's saying there. You're having to run against somebody who voted with Trump 90% of the times. And we are coming to a place where people, John Shue also said, which was another thing that sponsored this, that spawned this, that, what is it going to take to get those people to believe what's happening in these concentration camps, right? What is it going to take? And maybe if they get personal testimonies from them. And I'm saying that's not going to happen, because anybody who sees what happened January 6th and still thinks that it was a walk in the park and a visit, and anybody who thinks that, Trump isn't in the Epstein files after knowing he's in there 1,000 times, they're going to believe what they want to believe anyway. And we are fighting against that imperialism, that lack of having to deal with it. And this is its ugly son or daughter right here. Talk to me about what do we need to do to fix this, or even just your ideas on that. We haven't reconciled with this imperialism, with this racism, with this genocidal trajectory that we've been on for 250 years, even though we've put Band-Aids along the way.
Yeah, so I think what I would say to this is that it reminds me a lot of one of my very favorite articles about the Trump movement, written by Mr. Jamel Bowie, called "The Cruelty is the Point." And I think that the big thing about the cruelty being the point for so many of Trump's voters is, in fact, there's no convincing them that this is bad, because this is one of the things that certain kinds of Trump supporters really like about the movement, about what is going on, right? The idea that there are interlopers or enemies within who need punishing, and cruelty by the state is a feature, not a bug, for certain parts of the modern Republican movement, certainly for the MAGA movement in general. And what I would say about all of this is American history is long and includes lots and lots of eras and institutions which also ran on cruelty, right? This is a country that had plantations for a very long time. This is a country that had Japanese internment camps, right? And what that means to me is that it is a sign of an unhealthy or an unsteady democracy, that we do not currently grow the white blood cells for an immune system to keep these people away from the mechanisms of power. A working, healthy republic that's actually founded on the ideas of freedom and justice and liberty for all ought to be able to maintain institutions and maintain a civic consensus against allowing people for whom cruelty is a method of governance we have to keep them as far away from the mechanisms of power as possible. And in a functioning democratic society, we ought to be able to do that. And it troubles me greatly that we are currently not only unable to do that, but we have watched some of the worst, cruelest people in our country seize the mechanisms of power and begin to use them indiscriminately against whoever they want.
Floor is open. We can talk about this forever. I have a few other points that we need to get to, but I think that this is one that we can't get enough of. How do we stop it? What does it take? What is the injection to help build these white blood cells? Because we can't just, if we're just worried about it, and if we're just at a round table to all say, hey, you know what? I can't believe this happened. Oh, well, then I can shut it off. What are we going to do? How do we stop this? What does it take to stop this? Can anybody give me a historical background on what it takes to stop this? Only thing I know is a daggone world war, and I'm hoping that's not the case.
A reset
that
button
sounds.
is all
Oh,
I
please go
got.
ahead.
I was just going to say, I only got a reset button, but
I think that it's going to take fundamental radical change in the system of governance that we have, and the economic system that we have as well, because a lot of things that we see in this country, with the cruelty being the point, it's all to serve capital. It's all to serve the power and the control of the people who have consolidated the most wealth in this country. And it's going to take people understanding, the majority of people understanding that that is the problem, that the system that we have in this country is an unsustainable, inherently violent system that serves the purpose of those who want to take power by force and who want to consolidate all the wealth and the power for themselves so that they can exploit others to continue doing so. Because it is a system built on, exponential, infinite growth in a finite system. So I think it's going to take, and I think that it is possible, but I do have my doubts within the culture of this country, because the culture of this country needs to change in order for people to understand this is the problem and we need to do something in order to fix it. And I think that would take actively working against the systems that we have in this country. I think it would take community building, organizing within the community to stop giving money to the corporations in this country that are consolidating the wealth and power of the billionaires, by building, lines of mutual aid to take care of these small communities, developing community solidarity to work against the mechanisms of power. We have to cripple the levers of power that they have and build our own outside of that in order to work against that. And that's going to take a huge amount of sacrifice. That's going to take a huge amount of mitigating harm that's going to come within that sacrifice. I think that it's definitely a possible thing to do, is a plausible thing to do within the culture that we have in this country. I don't know yet. I don't think so.
Go ahead, director.
you're leading right into what I'm talking about, that the system is going to self-cannibalize if we don't figure it out.
Yeah.
Full stop. Here's and I'm going to just lay this out. So we've got data centers popping up all over the U.S. and their alleged use is saying that they're going to create jobs. The truth is they don't create enough jobs, or those jobs are taken by AI. If no one is working to buy the things that they want to sell to us, who the fuck is going to buy them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's issue one. Issue two, if we stop needing, like Chance is saying, if we stop relying on the systems that are built by other people to enrich themselves, they will no longer have a bottom line. They're going to be scared, which is why I think that one of the reasons we need to continue building community and solidarity, as Chance has been saying, is Delaney Hall is no longer accessible. They cannot hear us. But strategically, they're located on a port. I guarantee you, if the truckers can't go anywhere, or if things can't get out of that port, they might change their tune. So it's also about changing your strategy. And I think that getting over that overwhelmingness of apathy on either side is going to be a uphill battle. And that is where Chance and I probably have some alignment, because I can see the wheels turning and I see some people getting it, but there are still some people who unfortunately are holding on to things inside our society that are broken and will not sustain us if we want to move forward.
Tyler, you're running to be a part of that system. What say you here?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to chime in, because I think that I would kind of kick in the alternate kind of institutional perspective here, which is, as a guy who is trying to use the power of Congress for good, I'm a strong believer that the republic itself is not yet lost, and we are not at a point yet where there is nothing to be done inside the structure either. I'm sure there are tactical or strategic agreements or disagreements that I could have with folks on this call about that particularly. But when we talk about the kind of long arc of American history and placing this in a historical context, I draw a lot of inspiration personally. I've been asked, who are your political role models? Who are the people who you look up to in American history? And invariably, I end up choosing Abraham Lincoln and Lyndon Johnson because they align with the two periods of Reconstruction in American history. And to me, given the kind of structural crisis that we are undergoing right now, right, a decay in the function of one of the two major political parties, the rise of massive authoritarian extremism and fascist enablers on Trump's side of the aisle, overt white nationalists and Christian nationalists in positions of power and influence in the administration. I draw a lot of inspiration from the fact that in times of abnormal and exceptional cruelty in American history, actually, the Republic itself, if we are willing to use its power in this way, has the ability to make massive political change to back up kind of the social change that's happening around it, right? So to me, social change, building solidarity, all of these things are excellent, but I am kind of a cynic in that I don't believe they can do everything that they are capable of without holding and wielding actual political power inside the American system and republic we live in. And here we go. Now we're getting into the debate, Director. I see your hand. I do want to finish this point.
No. I hear what you're saying. I'm only going to
let him finish the point.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought, and I
Okay.
got something for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and here's the reason that I draw so much inspiration from the previous two reconstructions, right? Because these are unfinished work. It was unfinished in the 1860s and 1870s, right, with the corrupt bargain of 1877. It was unfinished in the 1960s, and we are currently watching the decay of the second Reconstruction by the Supreme Court, ripping it apart. This, to me, is where the American Republic, as slow as it is to react, as difficult as it is to make structural change, if we can build both the social power and the political power to make structural change in the American Republic, this is where I think of things like constitutional amendments that fundamentally alter the scope of who is protected by the American government and can help us to move towards a more equitable future, right? I don't think anybody now, well, maybe some Republicans would dispute this, but I don't think anybody now would say in good conscience or in good faith that, say, the Reconstruction Amendments, right, 13, 14, 15, are not fundamental to the way our country is run at this point. They will always be under attack by the right-wing movement in how we do these things. But to me, it is essential that while we have a window to use the U.S. government for good, not only that we seize it.
Oh, he lost it. Mrs. Ops, I'd like to hear what you have to say. He'll be back on.
Okay, so he's drawing inspiration from two very unique individuals. I'll keep the personal comments of those individuals, but I do want to.
You lost it with the internet, Tyler. We on to Mrs. Ops.
Go ahead. My point was finished in its entirety. Please, your turn.
I just wanted to point out that one of the people you draw inspiration from for Reconstruction, I can understand why you would delineate to them. But I want to point out that at least in the aspect of Abraham Lincoln, he was only looking to keep the United States united. He did not care. He said if he could have kept the slaves enslaved and done that, he would have done so. So I know that's probably not what you were thinking about when you were referencing the ideologies of Reconstruction, but that's immediately where my mind went, because the people who look like me, that is what we think of, because we've been used as pawns. Our bodies have been used for labor, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that the confines of government and political power aren't necessary, because you can go look at New York City right now. Mandami's doing a fantastic job. So I think that what we need is a shift from the standard of the binary system that we are currently in and have always existed in, and we need to broaden that spectrum to open for new ideologies, because I don't think that socialism is a dirty word. forward. I don't think that it's I don't think it's awkward or radical to want to care for your neighbor. But I do think that what we've been dealing with is the media, the disinformation campaign, and the lack of just like education system and structure throughout the United States. It's caused all of this. So I would like to see a way forward through reformation, but my concern is with this current administration, we're not going to get there. And what's going to be left when it's turned to trying to for the next person that's elected? That's my concern, if we even get there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to say something in response to that as well. The status quo that somebody like Abraham Lincoln was trying to protect is a lot of what we're seeing with congressional Democrats that we have right now, because of the structure of power that we have, the system that we have that literally got us to this point in the first place. When you see congressional Democrats not actually putting up any type of fight, it's because they're still trying to protect that system, protect that status quo that is in desperate need of that fundamental radical change. And if we don't have that, then we will just be perpetuating the same things with somebody else who's going to do it in a much cleaner and palatable way, because it's still going to be serving the exact same system of capital, the exact same unsustainable system that we have in this country that got us to this place in the first place, that serves people who want to exploit others in order to consolidate power for themselves. And I do think that right now, like, we can talk about all the different types of political movements in the past that garnered, amendments to the Constitution, that garnered more rights for people and everything like that. But those times in the past when there was that level of cruelty, or when fascism, had its day in the sun, there wasn't this type of consolidation of wealth and power amongst the elites, and this unprecedented weaponry and technology that we have right now. And then also with the people who are in power, the tech billionaires and the politicians that surround them, and vice versa, they have put their plans out in writing. Like, we know exactly the future that they want. They want to cripple democracy because they do not believe in it. They don't believe it's conducive to the world that they want to live in, where they have all the power and everyone else is pretty much enslaved. If you look at Project 2025, if you look at dark enlightenment theory that all these tech billionaires subscribe to, it is a bleak tech feudalist future that they want, and they are actively getting it right now. So if we do not have that radical change, it's not going to matter what Democrat we put into office to do what, to maintain the status quo. It's still going to get to that point that the people who have all the wealth and power have right now. So I do agree that with Tyler that it's going to take both things, but both of those things have to be have that fundamental radical change. We can't just rely on the mechanisms that have already been baked into them. We have to build new mechanisms on both facets, the political side and the social side.
So I want to get back in. I want to talk about this radical change. I want to talk about the change federally, locally. I want to talk about the change politically. But I want to make sure that we have Tyler here when we do talk about that change, so we can have a discussion with someone who may be a part of that. Can you hear me now, Tyler?
Yes, I sincerely apologize. My audio went out. I completely lost the ability to.
No worries.
Sincerely apologetic about that. I'm sure it's an excellent discussion, but I did not drop of my own accord.
You're good. You're good. So we're going, Chance, I need you to know, and YouTube, I need you to know, we're going to have to talk about these antics that these right-wing podcasters, supposed newscasters are doing. I believe that you got a very interesting DM, Chance, that we need to talk about this guy. But Well, it's going to be interesting when I get on his ass. But more importantly, since you did come back in time, Tyler, here's the thing. You mentioned Abraham Lincoln, and on a whole other side of what he was thinking or why he did it. I think more importantly than that, because the levers of politics are rarely about what you think is right or wrong. It's about how to maintain and keep power. That goes, I don't care who or what, unless you're talking about Native American governance. And even in that case, I doubt that it was all just, fruits and berries. The most important part of that is Abraham Lincoln is, instead of cutting their fucking heads off, and I can make that more palatable to you for a commercial for tomorrow. He let them go. He let them go. Instead of saying, you guys are going to pay restitution, you guys are going to pay your slaves, you guys are going to give that the 2 acres and a mule or whatever the heck it is, and you're going to be punished. You cannot come anywhere near the courthouse again. You cannot come anywhere near the house of government again. Instead, he said, it's all water under the bridge, and he let this fester. The same thing happened with the J6 people. But they get pardoned. Everything is now festering. And what happens is we're at the precipice. And I'd like to know, as Lincoln is one of your people that you're looking to, when you get there, I need to know that that's one of his decisions that you will not follow through on.
Yeah, so I get to nerd out a little bit about the meaning of the Civil War and the Reconstruction. So thank you all for the opportunity. First of all, I want to go back because one of the last things that I heard before the audio disconnected is Director's correct point that at the time of the first inaugural, Lincoln was saying, yes, if I could, maintain the whole nation, if I could bring it back in with all the slaves still in chains, I would do it. If I could do it without fighting war, I would do it. Like, he was absolutely saying that in 1860 and 1861 about the time Fort Sumter was occurring. But between the first inaugural and the second inaugural, his second inaugural, when he's coming back into power at the close of the war, he's using phrases like, if every drop of blood spilled by the bondsman's lash needs to be repaid in kind by the sword, so must it still be said that the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. The conversion of the Civil War, the adaptation of Lincoln and his government over the course of the war from this is a war to maintain the political integrity of the Union to, in the middle, the Emancipation Proclamation and then the 13th Amendment, and this becoming a war about the destruction of the institution of slavery because no other change would have been adequate for the amount of blood spilled in the contest of the actual war, right? That conversion, that adaptation in Lincoln is the thing that I greatly admire, right? He comes in kind of a machine politician representing a cause that is for abolition, right? But wins in a 4-way political contest, a split vote, one of the most split in American history, to take power, loses the South, and then has to fight with the South all this time until he and his cabinet and the army and the people of the North recognize that there is no resolution to this war that is commensurate to the sacrifice besides the absolute annihilation of the institution of slavery. But the other thing that I would say is it is true that after the war, there was this sense in Lincoln of himself, right, that, well, if Jefferson Davis escapes or if Robert E. Lee doesn't, get hanged, that's not so bad. But actually, none of those decisions were Lincoln's to make. He died right at the end of the war in his assassination. And those decisions were made by Andrew Johnson, an inveterate, terrible president, a sympathizer with so many of the Southern causes. He himself was from Tennessee, the one Southern senator to remain in power during the war, who remained with the Union, and a terrible choice. If I had my way, having like Thaddeus Stevens or somebody in that position, or Hannibal Hamlin or Benjamin Butler to say, no, actually, we're going to hang Robert E. Lee for what he did, right? We are going to, throw Jefferson Davis and the cabinet in jail or worse for treason, right? Like those measures should have been taken, but they were not taken because we didn't wield between 1865 and 1869, the mechanisms of American power towards justice, they were actively inhibited by President Andrew Johnson, who inherited it after Lincoln's assassination. And eventually that was rejected by the Northern public by electing Ulysses S. Grant, who spent 8 years of his presidency sending the army into the South to absolutely crush the Klan and make sure that Reconstruction happened to its fullest extent, right? This is the time period where we have black faces in every state legislature in the South. It's the time period where, black legislators are actively contesting the governorship of Southern states, right? The Freedmen's Bureau exists. All of these are much more in line with the sort of vision of reconstitution and justice that I support, right? Also, in the civil rights era, we know that in the 1950s and 1960s, starting with Brown v. Board and the deployment of the 101st Airborne to Little Rock, Arkansas, and then all the way through to like the middle 1960s, it is only a strong federal government that is active in the pursuit and cause of justice that can bring the most reactionary, the most inveterate political forces in our country to heal and to ensure justice for all. This to me is the real inspiration, the real legacy of Lincoln, of the Johnson administration, right? We can talk all day about how Lyndon Johnson was not a good guy, personally necessarily. The Vietnam War was an absolute disaster, right? Like I'm not here to apologize for his personality, right? But if we accept the idea that a bad person, okay, yeah, right. Like not crazy, good stuff. I'm not about to apologize for any of that.
Unorthodox, but
unorthodox. Unorthodox is about the nicest way to describe it that I can imagine. But if we think of the idea of the use of the American Republic, the American government, the systems of our Constitution for justice, then these time periods are great inspirations to me, because we know that after as many abuses we can possibly imagine, right? Like after decades and decades and decades of the institution of slavery poisoning American politics, that there was this moral rebirth that the federal government could transform itself into, at least for a time, maintaining through legal and military and political force. And then after the 1960s to do the same with segregation and the death of Jim Crow. Like these things to me show that if we are willing to hold power in the American government, if we are willing to use the American government as a tool for good and for justice, we actually have one of the greatest systems in the world to apply that justice if we are willing to seize power through the institutions that are available to us.
Oh, Chance, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that the political power in this country, while I agree with, the majority of those points, I think that right now, as we were saying, I don't know if you heard what I was talking about before, how then we didn't have the unprecedented weaponry and technology that we have right now, and consolidation and wealth and power by the elite class of tech billionaires that have completely put their intentions with the future of this country out in writing for everybody to see, trying to move us towards a tech feudalist state. And the political power in this country does not exist without the capital power of the ruling class, who are surrounding the politics right now and pushing their own agenda and maneuvering us to a place of tech feudalism, a complete AI surveillance state where corporations rule. And that's what the political power is. They have, no respect for democracy. They don't see democracy as conducive to the vision that they have. So how do we remove that power and that influence from the political power in this country when it's already baked into the system itself that we have? And the system itself that we have is what gives them the opportunity to consolidate that wealth and power.
Devil's advocate, real quick, you guys can respond, whoever wants to. When you say, at that point, they didn't have the type of wealth, the amalgamation of wealth that there is now, in control of so much of it. And I'd say, well, and even politically involved, I'd say Well, the reason we have monopoly laws is because there was another time that the wealth controlled everybody and kept people under thumb and kept kids working in factories and cutting off their fingers and owned all of the railroads and all of the phones and all of the roads and all of the tile and all of the tar, right? There was another time that it happened, and this is just devil's advocate playing, again, using Tyler's adage of, because the people in charge, because the politicians took what was happening in a movement and turned it into legislation, we ended up getting those things that now we would say, okay, now you enjoy. And that is, the weekend, no kids working, the monopoly laws, blah, 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 blah. And those aren't blah, blah, blahs. Those are important things. That's to go with Tyler's point. And this devil's advocate, on the second half of it, Tyler, I want to say to you, isn't it interesting that every time Lyndon B. Johnson said to Martin Luther King's face, I don't have the power to give you the Voting Rights Act, until he went out there and got sprayed and bit with dogs. And after that got televised, was the first time that he had the power to do something politically. So it is in tandem, but it's in tandem only at the expense of the bodies of the people willing to go out and die and fight for it every time. It's never a time where they just came up with what needs to be done. And I want to know is that if that's where we are, that that's what life is, fine. But let's say that honestly, anybody can speak.
I actually, you just got right onto what I was going to say before Chance spoke, was that, if you look at the Black experience throughout this nation, right, our ancestors were carted over here during the Atlantic slave trade, forced to work on land and make crops and take care of people who also took land from indigenous people. And we look at, we just went through the Reconstruction period between, Andrew Jackson, who took over after the assassination of Lincoln. So where we talk through all of that, but what was lacking when we talk about justice, I think justice also has to hold up that ideology of accountability, and that has lacked. Chance has brought it up. Doug has brought it up. We have never really actually fully held any of the perpetrators accountable. That is why you have such extremism and white nationalism still extenuating. That's why Proud Boys just walked freely in front of a detention facility in Newark, New Jersey, because they are emboldened by what is being happened. There's no accountability for people who are intentionally cruel, people who feel that it is okay to treat someone inhumanely based upon their appearance, their sexual orientation, or their gender. Like that is my issue. It's a continuous and a perpetual cycle, and nowhere in that cycle has there been accountability, and this is why we are where we are today.
I agree 100%. Devil's advocate. Is that why? Because right now in Germany, there's another right-wing Nazi party coming back up, and they held them pretty daggone accountable. They got bombed for it. They did learn it from Jim Crow. No, that's true. That's true. So I'm saying, are they still borrowing from us? What I'm saying is there a human infallibility that needs to be legislated for all the time? Because I'm of the belief that I guarantee you, if there are 10 humans in a room, 3 of them will end up doing the wrong thing every time to F over the 7 if they could. Because there's 3 out of 7 people who are like that. Right now, they're MAGA. That's the 30%. There's 3 out of 7 people in every African nation, in every European colony, in every Indian town, all over Asia. Every place you're going to find 10 humans, 3 of them are going to do this. I think that egalitarian rule is great, and we need to work towards it. I think we need to be dealing with our communes without saying the full word, and need to work towards it. And we got to be fighting all the time, spilling the blood, so that the legislatures can get the power they need, as Martin Luther King put it. But I think if we ever believe that there's something that is going to stop that 3% from existing or hold them back, we may just be wrong in that assessment and fail every time. Go ahead, Chance.
I think when you're talking about putting, 10 people in a room, and there will always be, people in there who are going to fuck up things for the rest of them and everything like that. I think that happens because of the system that we live in that serves profit over people. So it incentivizes people to not care about their fellow man, but care about the profit that they're going to get so that they can have more and feel comfortable over the other people that they see. That's why exploitation happens. And that's why I think there needs to be a fundamental change in the system so that we are not serving capital. We are serving the people. We are serving each other. And I think that the reason why a lot of these problems persist in this country is that we have that consolidation of wealth and power by people who want to exploit others. As long as we keep perpetuating that, we won't be able to legislate it out unless we have that fundamental change.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here, I think that there's a point that director made, and that Chance is kind of aiming at here, and Drill Sergeant Doug, you've been aiming at as well, which is, yeah, none of these political changes happen without big social movements behind them, right? So to director's point, right, like the civil rights movement happened after well over a decade of organized, nonviolent, but still extremely brutalized political resistance, right? Lots and lots of fire hoses and dogs and arrests and just terrible brutality to raise the public profile of what was happening with Jim Crow in the era of television. But we talked about, the 40-hour work week, and we talked about, the invention of the weekend and getting kids out of, steam looms and all these other, really brutal industrial institutions, right? That happened because union organizers in this country were shot at and arrested and disappeared. And all of these things required huge, massive pressure political movements that were crushed either by private forces like the Pinkertons, or by Bull Connor and his cops in the South. I think, to me, though, that one of the things that is so noticeable to me about this political moment is my entire adult life now has been, I'm 31, I was born in 1994. My entire adult life has been characterized by a series of really big social shifts and social movements, right? In this country, right? The Black Lives Matter movement, the Women's March, right? These enormous kind of enduring, powerful social movements that I think the problem in our politics now is a disconnection from the levers of power in Washington, because our politicians are unwilling to capitalize on the social gains that are being so hard won by organizers in the street. That, to me, is the actual problem here. And with this midterm election, this is what we're trying to do, right? Like electing the right kind of Democrat, getting the right kind of person in office to say, okay, for over a decade, organizers have been, lying down in front of, ICE vehicles, or in front of, cops firing tear gas at nonviolent protesters, right? Like we have people who've been putting their bodies on the line, and we know that the number of killed is not zero, right? The number of injured and brutalized is not zero. And those sacrifices can only be made good, can be rendered to have not been in vain by a political consensus and by a Washington that is actually willing to govern, to make up those social gains in actual policy. This, to me, is the reason why so many Americans, affordability is part of it, and discontent with our democratic system is part of it. Money in politics is all part of it. But to me, this demand, this strong demand in America, particularly since 2016, for change, right? For social change, for economic change, for a country and a Washington that actually responds to the discontent and the pain that people are feeling. All of that is upstream of how we got Trump a couple of times, right? And it's how we have like these massive consistent changes, these huge wave elections in Congress all the time, because the most reliable button now in the American people will press in our politics is, this isn't working, I want it to change. And if we don't provide the American people with a credible option that builds a future towards justice, that builds a better economic future, that capitalizes on the actual like pain and suffering that our activists and social movements are feeling, we are not doing our jobs to secure a better future, and people will choose the change option that is worse, that is more brutal every single time over the status quo.
That's actually a great point, because I was going to ask you a follow-up question, because right, I'm in New Jersey, right? I reluctantly voted for Mikey Sherrill, and because of the primary, she was not my choice, but I knew the other option was not a good option at all. And somehow we are still in the same boat where she is choosing to uphold the status quo. So that leaves me, an organizer, and many other people in my state saying, what's next? So I want to ask you, as somebody who's running to make a difference, how do we engage the rest of the people in making a better effort at getting the right candidates, the highlights that need, the visibility that they need? Because ultimately they're only going with the people who already have the PAC money, the people who are already taking advantage of the system that is there to make it benefit them. So we're between a rock and a hard place. I'm doing everything I can on the ground to be, engaging and teaching people that they need to vote, the importance of doing it more than just in the presidential election, because your local officials have everything to do with what happens to you. So I just want to hear from you what some of your ideas might be on how I might be able to maybe boost my efforts and getting people more encouraged to do the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I could commiserate here a little bit with you, because I think this is a challenge that I think about a lot as well. I'm running in a primary election, right? And California is a vote by mail by right state, right? So everyone can vote by mail. We all get ballots. We know, we get all of these voter guides. We get tons and tons of information. Even so, this is a high turnout year, but even so, right now with a primary tomorrow, the number of ballots returned is 17% of eligible voters, right? And if we don't vote in, say, primaries, we wind up with corporate choices every time because DC and PACs decide for us. If we don't have durable political organization long ahead of candidates declaring themselves, we wind up with establishment choices every single time. But more than that, to your question about how do we kind of bridge this gap, I think this is a two-way street, right? Candidates need to be willing to go to organizing groups, to go to organizers, to engage with their community, to engage with unions, to engage with groups from, Indivisible to Black Lives Matter to everyone in between, and folks who are building new movements all the time, right? The anti-ICE movement is a movement primarily on the streets, not in our politics right now. That is a responsibility of our candidates to make those engagements, to show up, to be part of these things, and to recognize that they are representing their constituents partially through these movements that are occurring on the street all the time. Conversely, to me, this is the answer of, Chance has mentioned this a few times, right? Building solidarity, building institutional power, building institutional memory, right? To me, because the Republic, damaged as it is, still functions, one of the best things that we can be doing with building that institutional power is ensuring that we have durable institutions outside of, say, the party structures or adjacent to the party structures with political memory of how to talk to politicians, how to mobilize voters with lists of people to call and to get out into the streets, not just to protest, but also to vote, also to sign people up, right? Like that kind of handshake, right? Like going back to, not to bring up Lincoln for the 800th time on this thing, but one of the things that we completely forget now about the election of 1860 and first years of the Civil War is that the Republican Party, then a very different party than it is now, the Republican Party of the 1860s actually mobilized voters in northern cities through these institutions of basically what we would recognize as like like large mobilized kind of dedicated groups called the Wide Awakes, right?
Oh, you mean something like what the Kirks are running right now, where they have pockets of them every single place in America, and the Democrats are non-existent there. The Turning Point USA, like how they have them everywhere, and we're failing at that mobilization, is what I'm saying, Tyler. They're popping up on on high school campuses. They're gonna be in kindergarten in a minute because they realize that they need to be mobilized. Democrats. And I promised Kaz I wasn't gonna yell on this one. I apologize. Go ahead, Tyler.
To your point, right? Like no one ever accused the modern Republican Party of not understanding how power works, right?
Yeah.
Like these guys absolutely understand that there is a mobilization component, right? This is why they are perfectly willing to lose money on right-wing media channels, right? They're willing to just chuck money down the drain on One American News Network, Daily Wire, Newsmax. Fox, of course, makes
Oh my
money, but it didn't
God.
always, right? But they're willing to light that money on fire because it's not about the profit in those specifically, right? Sure, the people at the top get rich, they pay everybody really well, but fundamentally, the thing that they're buying there is a consistent political bullhorn of mobilization, fear, and anger. And that goes all the way down the chain, right? Like if you look at how the right wing captured the legal system in this country, the Federalist Society has been working for 50 years at every law school that they can get their hands on to mobilize young lawyers who don't necessarily have, institutional connections, who have a hard time getting clerkships with judges, right? Or struggling to kind of break out into that top tier and have the legal career they feel they deserve. And then somebody comes along and says, hey, we have this group that quote unquote debates the Constitution all the time, but also like we have all this money, all of these resources, we'll connect you with people, we have judges who are going to give you jobs, right? Like that's how that happened over the course of a couple of generations. That's what Turning Point is for with kind of generalized college kids and high school kids. My personal favorite is I've heard recently that Turning Point is branching out into now Northern Ireland, which is crazy to me, but here we are. But the thing to me about all of this stuff is the right fundamentally understands, and they have lots and lots of billionaires and corrupt corporate interests on their side who are willing to light money on fire to buy political legitimacy and power. To them, this is an investment, and we do not invest the same way. One, because we're at a resource disadvantage when it comes to big money, and two, especially since Citizens United, money has an outsized influence in American politics, and it has for a while, but it's gotten particularly bad in the last 15 years or so. And so, to me, I think that the biggest thing that we have on our side is not to get a little sentimental about it here, right? But like people get mobilized by causes of justice. People get mobilized by causes of outrage. And the difference for us is that we need to keep them inside the tent and working to a better future. And that institutional challenge is where I think we fall flat right now.
Let me direct this in a way because we're going to have time is of the essence. And I'm sure whatever you had to say, Director Ops, was going to be out daggone standing. Okay. Part of that pipeline is these right-wing YouTubers, TikTokers, all of these people. They are being paid by foreign entities. They are being held up without actual viewership. They are disgusting creeps who I believe deserve the worst of the worst. And they show up to these actual organic places, protests, like what's been happening at Delaney, to bring it back to Delaney. People are starving in Delaney because they're not eating on purpose. Realize that, YouTube. They're going on hunger strikes and then maybe even being force-fed violently through their nose. And they're dying. And 70% of them have no charges. They're not doing anything. They haven't done anything. They're dying. Now, organically, people have come up there, and New Jersey is different than it was in Minneapolis. There's not a lot of organized peacekeepers in New Jersey. People just coming through. They come through is what's happening. They're just coming through. Right. And you know what? People like me who belong to different organizations who've learned how to try to keep people safe, we've had to figure out new ways to do it quickly, because guess what? New Jersey coming through, and we just figure it out. And they're not playing games. And they're coming with their garbage cans and their plastic bottle and their makeshift whatever. I'm not even snitching. They coming through is all I'm saying. And what happens is the people who are being paid by these foreign entities, the people who are these right-wing, disgusting human beings who back child fondlers, show up and agitate. I'm gonna tell you what. There comes a time in every peaceful march that self-defense has to be recognized and understood. Chance, I'm going to let you speak about the person who you know I'm talking about, what he did and when he came there. But I want to make sure that I'm saying this in front of everybody. If you're asking Drill Sergeant, there also was armed defense of the black pools. People who came home from the military and realized that their sons and daughters couldn't swim in the same pool, or they had to drain the water. And then when they decided to do something about it, KKK came around. And the only time they stopped was when people stood there with their rifles. The black folks did. Know the difference between the peaceful protest and the self-defense. Know the difference between being seen getting beaten up on camera for the purpose of getting beaten up, and beating up one of these bum-ass motherfuckers out here that's coming with a Confederate flag to kill you and take your rights away. There's two different things. All right, Chance, I apologize. Go ahead. Tell the story.
Say first to the point of, outside right-wing agitators. Of course, we're always going to have to push back against the narratives of the fascists and everything. But within the movement, I do see a lot of people who are concerned about the perception of the fascists, of these right-wing agitators. And I'm of the thought of, why be concerned with their perspective? Yes, you have to push back against their narrative and everything like that. But when people try to police like the language of protesters, when people try to police some of the tactics of protesters and say, hey, they're going to use that to fit their narrative. And I'm like, you could sit there and do nothing and they're going to still push their exact same narrative. Stop giving a fuck about their perception. Stop caring about what they say. Don't talk to them. Stop trying to change their minds, because they're still going to push the exact same rhetoric over and over again. We know who they are. We know they're on the take. So stop giving them any type of credence at all. That's how I feel. And one more thing I do, because he's asking about something very specific. We were driving back last night. We were watching the live streams. We were watching Status Quo, Mercado, as the police.
Man, Tyler got out. He said, I didn't sign up for this. Tyler
yeah.
got out. He said, I got to get elected tomorrow.
But we were watching as, hundreds of cops in riot gear are there, and they're kettling, this much smaller group of protesters and pulling out the press one by one and everything, and keep pushing the press back. And as we're watching it, I get a DM from Jake Lang. And his DM says, hey, brother.
Tell everybody who Jake Lang is. Why?
He's a Nazi.
Okay.
An uncoordinated one at that.
Yeah, he's a loser ass grown man baby. And
J6er, pardoned.
Pardoned January 6er. He's a fucking
January
treasonist.
6er, who was just put in jail for causing a ruckus at Chud the Builder, another fellow Nazi of his, racist.
Dude fell over an ice sculpture.
Yeah.
Ticket.
Yeah, he was arrested for that too.
He's a loser.
So we're on the way and he DM'd me and he says, "Hey, brother." Now, I was thinking at first that he DM'd me because he's currently in talks with another activist, Dave the Viking, about doing like a sanctioned fight with him or something like that. And I said that I would film it if it came to it. But now, once he got released, he said that, and he didn't coordinate with Dave the Viking or any of the other people, that it was going to happen on July 4th and that he was going to use it to raise money for Chud the Builder's legal fees, which is all bullshit. And I, know the people who were talking about coordinating that fight with Dave the Viking and everything. And they're like, this was never the case. None of this was discussed. He's just talking out of his ass and everything. So whatever. But he DMs me and I'm like, why is this loser DMing me? So I was going to leave him on red until I woke up this morning and I saw that after all those hundreds of cops brutalized those protesters, arrested them one by one and everything, that he came with I think a pro-ICE flag and a bullhorn and was like, "Thank you so much, ICE, for arresting these terrorists," and everything like that. Conveniently came after all the protesters were gone, after the police had, because I guess he probably doesn't want another Minneapolis to happen to him when he was driven out and got water balloons thrown at him in -20 degrees.
Also, he should be reminded that he picked the morning session because typically the only people out there are families and people picketing. There's not a lot of opposition that would have even challenged him. He knows what he's doing. They all are.
Yeah. So then when I woke up this morning and I saw that he was out there, because I heard rumblings that he would be and that he was out there, and I was like, it's really weird that he DM'd me at the same time. And I was wondering, like, did they know that I was potentially going to be out there? Because on the 30th, like, I don't call myself a journalist. I'm a documentarian. Because I reserve the right to protest as well. I'm also an activist and an organizer and everything. And I can't help myself. When I see fascists doing fascist shit, I'm going to be screaming at them and telling them about who they are. So I was up there with Ian at the front the majority of the night when we were being pushed back. And I was giving it right back to the police. I was telling them that they should be ashamed of themselves. I was, saying a lot of things to them that they did not like. And so they kept pointing at me and shining the light and everything. So I was like, was this dude just sending this, hoping that I would be there and be arrested with the rest of the protesters at the same time? But who knows? But yeah, Jake Lang is a cowardly Nazi, and he showed up after the protesters were gone. And this is something that he continues to do while advocating for a racist who was antagonizing people by calling them the N-word and saying a bunch of slurs to them, and then ended up shooting somebody.
A disabled black combat veteran at that.
Yeah. And hopefully he spends the rest of his life in prison. And hopefully Jake Lang does the same at some point.
I'd like to thank John Shu for being here, being a sport, and having a lot to say. And if I see you again, if I can speak to you again today to make sure that we can do something, even me and you alone, I'll give you a one-on-one interview. Sorry for not having it on the screen today. I'd like to thank Tyler out there in California, I believe the 6th district as well. Let me make sure. Well, I'll make sure I'll say his name in the edits there. And I'd like to thank Chance Meeting. I'd like to thank Director Ops for being here. And I'm going to end it with this. Number one, they're dying in there. They're dying in these places. These places are all over America. Find you one. Go there. Find you one. Go there. Find you one. Okay? If you're watching this, you're more than likely on the same page, even though I have a variety of views, and I don't subscribe to almost none of them, because I'm still waiting Still waiting for the right one. I'm still learning. I'm still growing, and I'm still accepting what I'm hearing from all the different people. One thing I will not accept, and I want to end it here because I don't want to end anybody's career. If I see you, Jake Lang, if I have a group of people who don't fuck around, bitch. I have a group of people that will ensure that your tires will no longer be rideable and that fucking flag is wrapped around your fucking neck. I swear it. Now, come try me and text me, hey, brother. Anybody in Drill Sergeant Spec Ops team, let us know what you need, homie, boy. And I'm going to end it there because I believe that all of you out there should be as strong. I believe all of you out there should be strong enough not to be violent in the face of the authority. So the cameras catch you getting beat up. They did it, so we can do it. I also think that when they come around and they're not the authority, they deserve everything you got. You heard it here first. I'm not telling you to watch what you say or what you do. Get you a pair of brass knuckles and fuck these motherfuckers up anytime they come around. Because they will not destroy what we're building. That's all I needed to say. I'm glad that the other people were off. All right.
I wasn't going to message him back, but then when I saw that he was out there last night saying that shit, I was like, fuck. And my girlfriend was like, don't do it. And I was like, go fuck yourself, Nazi. I don't think he appreciated that because he read it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna end this recording. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Go, 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 resist, resist, resisting, resist, fuck this shit's going down, that's right here, right now, the political drain, just the news you need, nothing driven by greed, no sipping Kool-Aid, Sims cooking on that knee, so then we got it again.
That was the Political Drain podcast, which can be heard on www.groovechillradio.com/political-drain and can be viewed on the Political Drain YouTube channel anytime. Once again, thank you for listening to Groove Chill as we resist fascism in any form, pursue democracy, peace, and love.